The Belt War, Part 2, Chapter 21, Retaliation. Vega Point didn't cheer when Arg returned. They stood, silent, hundreds of them in the hangar base, along the catwalks, outside repair bays, and in open-door cargo holds. No applause, no anthem, just solemn respect, the kind only earned when you take down a god. The Dust Widow limped into Dock 6, trailing smoke. Her rear quarter was scorched black from the flak bursts. Her starboard stabilizers were barely hanging on. The landing struts groaned on contact with the deck. Arg had to override the seal manually just to get the hatch open. When he stepped out, he looked like the Widow felt, torn up, scorched, but still standing. A bloodied bandage ran above one eye. His left arm was braced with emergency med foam. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "She's still flying." Someone in the crowd laughed once, sharp and unguarded. Rel was the first to reach him, scanning the damage with a mix of disbelief and pride. "You actually did it." "Ship's toast. Core's overheated. Port nacelles cracked, and half my nav sensors are fried." Rel shrugged. "You're alive. That makes you worth more than half the fleet." Arg stepped down from the ramp, and the station shook. A low tremor, then a second. The lights flickered. Sirens began to wail. The crowd snapped alert as one. Arg turned to Rel, voice steel. "Talk to me." "Helix response fleets just came out of slip space. 4 dreadnoughts, escort cruisers, carriers." "They're coming here?" "No," Rel said grimly, handing over a datapad. "They're hitting everything." Arg scanned the report. System relays flared with red marks. Farron's Claim, Vallis Cradle, Verdin Hollow. Dozens of small stations and camps, all lit up with distress signals. Helix wasn't trying to reclaim control. They were trying to burn it all down. "They're calling this retribution," Harrow said, joining them with a grim expression. "The corporate boards just issued a broadcast. They said your attack was an act of terrorism. They've sanctioned full military operations across the belt." "They're declaring war on civilians," Arg said. "No," Rel looked at him dead in the eye. "They already have." Arg turned, looking across the bay. The belt's fleet, if you would call it that, was battered and raw, a mix of repurposed mining ships, cargo haulers with welded armor, a few actual fighters on loan from sympathetic factions, good people, brave people. But they weren't ready, not for what was coming. He activated his personal comms. "Patch me into station-wide feed," he said, "and the Void Miner channel." "Live?" Harrow asked. Arg nodded. "Live." Arg stood on the Dust Widow's ramp, silhouetted by the flickering hangar lights and the scorched battle damage behind him. A mechanic was still hosing down blackened hull plating where the Widow had nearly vented its starboard fuel line. The smell of scorched metal and burning coolant hung in the air. He looked directly into the feed drone's lens, shoulders square despite the blood dried along his temple and the brace on his arm. His voice, when it came, was low, controlled, weathered by years of vacuum silence and loss. "This isn't about vengeance or territory. It's about survival. It's about memory. It's about not letting them decide what parts of us are allowed to exist. They think we're scattered, easy to step over. They don't see the strength it takes to live alone out here. They don't understand the kind of resolve that comes from fixing broken life supports with nothing but cold hands and borrowed time." His eyes flicked slightly to the side, the faintest ghost of a smile, like Tara was watching him from just beyond the edge of the camera. "They brought war to our doors, and they expected silence in return." He stepped forward, just once. Every voice in the station had gone quiet now, even the tools, even the engines. "So here's my message to them and to anyone still watching this from the dark. You can bury us in silence. You can chase us into rock and ice. You can even kill some of us. But we will not be still." He let that hang there, final, quiet, sharp as a knife drawn under a corporate throat. "The belt is awake." He reached out, cut the feed. And the Void Miner channel, millions strong now, lit up like ignition. Chapter 22. The fire spreads. The moment Arg ended his broadcast, the silence inside Vega Point shattered like a shock wave. Voices rose all at once, a roaring tide of relief, rage, and raw hope. It was not celebration. It was something older, fiercer. The sound of people waking from long oppression, ready to fight. Across the vast expanse of the belt, the message spread like wildfire. In the hollowed-out tunnels of Farron's claim, miners paused their endless labor. A group of grizzled drill operators, their hands scarred and stained with cosmic dust, crowded around a flickering screen set up in the mess hall. Among them was Mara, a former engineer turned freebooter, who slammed her fist on the table and shouted, "Finally, someone standing up!" Her crew, rough men and women with years of hard living in zero-G, exchanged grim smiles. Welding torches were set down, makeshift armor was strapped on, and drills were modified to fire rudimentary energy bolts. They weren't soldiers, but they knew how to fight for what was theirs. Out beyond the Pharos expanse, aboard the battered tug Sundown Runner, Jackson and his small crew of salvagers watched the broadcast on a cracked viewport screen. Their ship was little more than a rusted skeleton patched with sheets of scrap, but inside were men and women with fire in their eyes. "Widow's not alone anymore," Jax muttered, lighting a cigarette that burned dim in the recycled air. His second-in-command, Lyra, nodded grimly. "Time to quit running and start hunting." They plotted routes to rendezvous with other small groups, their voices low but determined. The days of isolated survival was over. On Verdin Hollow, a trading post that once barely survived on scraps and courier jobs, engineers and freighters turned from commerce to war. Tessa, the station's aging captain, stood on the command deck as workers bolted plates onto the hull, rerouted power to defense turrets, and reprogrammed cargo bots to carry munitions. "Keep the routes open and eyes sharp," she ordered. "If Helix thinks they can take us without a fight, they're dead wrong." Her veteran communications officer, Renee, tapping rapidly on a console, broadcasting Arg's message on every frequency the belt could reach. Even in the shadowed corners of Vega Point, the station was transforming. Every storage bay became a makeshift barracks. Engineers refitted mining haulers into heavily armed gunships. Navigators scrambled to coordinate hundreds of independent vessels, turning chaos into a scattered but growing fleet. Rel, now acting fleet logistics coordinator, barked orders through static-filled comms. "Patch in the Retaliator. Confirm armor integrity on the Terra's Flame. Divert power to shields on the Widow's Teeth." Each name was a spark lighting the dark. A ragtag armada built from hope and hard-earned grit. In the cramped quarters of a freighter near Koros Drift, Koresh sat alone, gazing at an old photo taped to the bulkhead. A smiling man with sun-bleached hair and calloused hands. Her husband, lost to Helix raids months before. With steady hands, she painted a crescent moon across the hull of her rear-armed tow rig. The ship's nameplate gleamed. Retaliator. "I'm coming home," she whispered. Further out, a hidden cluster of independent technicians in the spine pieced together a patchwork jammer from scavenged NAM beacons and reroute signal processors. They called their project GhostNet, a web of digital ghosts to blind Helix's surveillance. Lead engineer Ike leaned back, exhaling through cracked lips. "If Helix wants shadows, they're going to get ghosts." Back at Vega Point, June stood beside Arg, her calm voice a counterbalance to the chaos. 17 confirmed strike groups across the belt, she reported. "More are forming faster than we can track. Each one answers to your signal." Arg looked at the datapad, feeling the weight of their resolve pressing in. "Names?" June smiled wryly. "The Widow's Teeth, the Terra's Flame, the Retaliator, the Ghost Net. Each a promise from a different corner of this fractured belt." He swallowed hard, thinking of the countless lonely souls who'd finally found a cause worth standing and fighting for. As darkness deepened in the vast beyond the station's viewport, Arg returned to the Dust Widow. The ship was battered, her hull scarred but alive. a battered old warrior ready for another round. He settled into the warden pilot seat and closed his eyes. For a heartbeat, the silence wrapped around him like a familiar cloak. Then a faint whisper stirred in the stillness. Tara's voice, like a promise carried on the solar wind. "You're not just surviving anymore." Arg opened his eyes, set his jaw, and keyed the console. It was time. Chapter 23. First Strike. The planning room was dimly lit by the soft glow of hollow projectors, their light casting long, flickering shadows on the worn metal walls of Vega Point's old command center. The air was thick with recycled oxygen and the low hum of machinery running at max capacity. Amid the gathering crowd, the atmosphere was electric, charged with a mixture of anxiety, determination, and the fragile hope of those who had long lived in the shadow of corporate oppression. Arg stood at the center of it all, the glowing tactical holotable beneath his hand, showing the tangled web of the asteroid belt, dotted with the harsh red markers of Helix-controlled stations and supply lanes. His eyes traced the routes, his mind weighing every possibility, every risk. Around him were the faces of the belt's resistance, a mosaic of backgrounds and stories united by one desperate cause. There was Mara, the fierce drill operator from Farron's claim, her weathered hands clenched into fists at her side, eyes burning with the memory of lost comrades. Beside her, a lean man with cybernetic eyes, Voss, the grizzled freighter captain whose ship barely held together but whose knowledge of the asteroid fields was unmatched. Across the table, June, calm, focused, a former diplomatic courier who had seen the horrors of war and the scars of betrayal, and Rel, the fleet's logistics mind, juggling supply manifests and crew rosters with a precision born of necessity. Arg cleared his throat. Verdin Hollow. The name was more than a target. It was a lifeline. A battered trading post perched precariously on an asteroid deep in the outer belt, vital for the scattered communities depending on it for food, fuel, and hope. Helix took it recently, June said, pulling up detailed scans of the station's defense. Marines, automated turrets, sensor grids, the works. But they are spread thin. Supply chains stretched. They didn't expect us to fight back. Arg nodded, his voice steady. We strike fast, hit their blind spots. The asteroid belt terrains is our ally. We use the caves and fields as cover, fragment their communications before they can coordinate a defense. Mara spoke up, her voice rough, but resolute. We've been hiding in those caves for months. I know every tunnel. We can slip in where their sensors can't see. Voss smiled grimly. I'll lead a small craft through the narrowest gaps. The bigger ships can't follow. The room shifted, the tactical map alive with markers representing the ships and fighters willing to stand against Helix. We've got 20 ships ready, Rel said, eyes flicking across the datapad. Mostly converted miners and haulers. Armed, yes, but not warships. Their crews are rough and ready, but not trained for fleet battles. Arg's jaw tightened. We don't need a fleet battle. We need a surgical strike. Hit hard, disrupt their command, and get out before the cavalry arrives. June added, Supply lines are stretched thin on both sides. Our window is narrowing. The room filled with a low murmur, a collective breath held. Arg looked out the viewport at the infinite stars beyond Vega Point. In their cold light, he saw the faces of those who'd come before, the miners, the traders, the families who'd dare to call the void home. This is more than a fight for territory, Arg said, voice raw but steady. It's a fight for the soul of the belt. Every person out here is counting on us. He paused, then spoke directly to those gathered, to every miner, pilot, and mechanic listening through the channels. We've lived in the silence, in the shadows. Now we're making noise. We're making history. June leaned closer. The Widow's Teeth, Terrace Flames, Retaliator, Ghostnet. They're rallying ships from every corner, names whispered in hope and defiance. Mara's eyes glistened. I lost too many friends already. It's time to bring them home. Rel smiled for the first time in days. We may not have their firepower, but we've got something stronger. The will to survive. Arg took a deep breath. Tomorrow, We take back what's ours. Not just for ourselves, but for every soul that believes freedom is worth fighting for. The room erupted, not in wild cheers, but in a steady, growing roar of resolve. And as the stars outside Vega Point blinked cold and distant, the fire of rebellion had finally begun to burn. Chapter 24. The Assault on Verdin Hollow. Darkness pressed close as the fleet slipped through the asteroid belts surrounding Verdin Hollow, their hulls battered and patched, engines humming low beneath layers of stealth-modified plating. The stars beyond were cold pinpricks in an ink-black sky, silent witnesses to the imminent storm. Arg sat in the pilot's chair of the Dust Widow, the familiar creak of the ship's aging frame grounding him. Around him, his makeshift fleet arranged into formation, a patchwork armada cobbled together from miners, haulers, and salvagers. Not warships, but fighters forged by the hardship and desperation. His fingers hovered over the console, scanning live feeds from drones skimming the station's outer defenses. Automated turrets spun lazily, their targeting arrays flickering with power. The Helix Marines patrolled in slow circuits, confident and unaware. Yet beneath their complacency lay a brittle thread, ready to snap. From the comm channel, Mara's voice broke the tension sharp and steady. "Cavern's clear. No patrols. Ready for insertion." Arg's eyes flickered to the video feed. A group of lean figures clad in scavenged armor, weapons at the ready, slipping like shadows through the narrow tunnel carved into the asteroid's rough surface. "Good," Arg replied, voice low. "Initiate sequence breach. Disable sensors quietly." He felt the weight of every soul aboard the fleet. Each pilot, each fighter had gambled everything on this moment. The Retaliator darted forward, guided by Voss through a labyrinth of cragged rocks, every movement precise to avoid detection. Koresh's voice crackled through the static, a steady anchor. "Weapons control is vulnerable. I'm patching in coordinates." On the tactical holotable, a glowing red icon blinked rapidly, the heart of the station's defense systems. "On my mark," Arg said. "Everyone hold formation." Outside the station's bulk, drones launched in a coordinated ballet, probing and confusing sensor grids. The GhostNet team broadcasted a web of interference, blinding Helix eyes and scrambling communications. "Now," Arg whispered. The first salvo of ion charges tore through the silence, striking turret control nodes with surgical precision. Lights flickered and died. The station's eyes darkened. Helix Marines scrambled, their surprise palpable over the comms. Shouts echoed. Alarms blared. Mara's squad struck from the asteroid tunnels, swiftly neutralizing patrols and seizing control rooms with practiced efficiency. Every corridor fought back. Automated defenses activating, close-quarter fighter fights flared in cramped halls. Arg's voice cut through the chaos. "Hold fast. Regroup at Sector 3. Secure the power grid." Inside the Dust Widow, Arg's hands moved with the precision of years spent mastering a ship born of scrap and solitude. He maneuvered through the station's outer defenses, weaving past missile arrays and energy nets. He muttered under his breath, a quiet mantra to keep the edge steady. "You're not just surviving anymore." As the station shook with the rumble of explosions and firefights, Arg's eyes caught a flicker on the holoscreen, a wounded comrade sending a desperate distress signal. "Hold together," he urged. "We're not done." Hours bled into moments of tense silence and bursts of violence. The Widow's teeth engaging Helix reinforcements attempting to flank the station, their battered guns blazing with raw determination. June coordinated evacuation routes, relaying wounded and supplies between ships with practiced calm. Her voice was a beacon in the storm. Slowly, the tide turned. Helix forces, disoriented and outmaneuvered, began to falter. Arg leaned forward, voice steady but fierce. "This is our home. Every inch we take is a message. We fight for every miner, every traitor, every lost soul who refuses to bow." At last, the station's main command center fell. A cheer erupted from the comms, raw and ragged, but filled with triumph. Arg let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The station lights flickered back on, this time under new control. But as the fleet regrouped, a new chill set in. The victory was hard won and costly. Communications from deeper belt sectors warned of Helix fleets mobilizing in retaliation. The war was just beginning. Chapter 25. Mobilizing the Belt. The hum of Vega Point's command center had shifted from steady to frantic. Holoscreens flickered with impending reports and star charts flooded with blinking red markers. Helix fleets were closing in fast, tightening their grip around the belt's last bastion. The cold stars outside the viewport remained indifferent, but inside the station, the air burned with resolve. Arg stood near the main viewport, eyes scanning the tactical displays, each blip of light representing not just enemy vessels, but a challenge hurled at the heart of the belt. Around him, June coordinated the growing resistance network, her fingers flying across data pads as she routed supplies and organized reinforcements. "Over 50 ships are en route," she said. "Some barely space-worthy, but their crews, all in." Arg nodded, jaw tight. "We don't have fleets. We don't have war budgets. But we have something they never will. Each other." Across the belt, the call spread like wildfire. On Rilo Station, a mining hub orbiting a shattered moon, grizzled veteran Captain Celine Raff rallied her crew, converting cargo bays into makeshift armories. "We've lost too much to Helix greed," she told them, voice steel hard. "It's time to fight for what's ours." Near Verda Outpost, a small freighter pilot named Thomas Kerr scrambled with friends to retrofit his aging ship with stolen pulse cannons. "Arg's right," he muttered, fingers trembling in the controls. "We can't wait for someone else to save us." In the shadowed docks of Zervra Station, mechanic and former mercenary Leah Kest prepped a small fleet of jump tugs, each one armed and ready to run supplies and quick strikes. The war was no longer looming. It was cracking through the walls of every station in the belt. Skirmishes lit up the edge of the system. A Helix patrol ambushed a civilian convoy near the Neruda belt, expecting panic and surrender. Instead, they were met with coordinated fire from 3 refitted haulers and a converted ore carrier flying the rebellion's colors. Arg's voice, calm but resolute, cut through the tactical channel as the battle played out. "Stick to cover. Time your bursts. Let them burn fuel chasing shadows." The enemy disengaged, wounded and rattled. The message was becoming clear. The belt was not going quietly. Back aboard the Dust Widow, Arg stared at a blank holoscreen, then turned to Rel, who monitored network traffic at a comm station on the lower deck. "I need to make a broadcast," Arg said. Rel glanced up. "To your channel?" "No," Arg shook his head. "This one isn't for subscribers." He stepped closer. "I want it across all channels. Priority access open band. Every comm buoy, relay, black market repeater. However far you can reach. I want this playing on every deck, in every cargo bay, in every corporate office, and Helix Ops rooms." Rel studied him for a long beat. "They'll trace it." "Good," Arg said. "Let them." Rel nodded slowly, then began rerouting the network traffic. "Say the word." Arg stood before the camera in the Widow's comm alcove. No intro, no fancy edits. Just a plain steel wall behind him. Shadows underneath his eyes. The fire of 1,000 lost things in his voice. Rel gave the signal. "You're alive, full spectrum. They'll hear you." Arg didn't blink. "I'm not doing this for myself. I know I'm probably at the top of your hit list. I know you want me, and all the free people of the belt, dead or under your control. Well, you know what, Helix? The free people have spoken, and we've said no." A beat, a breath, a storm behind his eyes. "As for me," a razor-thin smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "You want me? Come get me." Rel hit the repeater. The message scattered like sparks across the void, riding the waves of pirate relays, bouncing off derelict satellites, embedding in Helix comm relays before they could scrub it. From fringe outposts to deep core processing stations, from corporate monitoring rooms to dying engine rooms full of fighters, the message played, over and over again. In the aftermath, Rel looked up from his console. "They heard it." Arg turned back towards the viewport. The stars hadn't changed, but the war had. He whispered, "Good." The war had officially crossed the line. There was no turning back. Chapter 26. The Black Gate Burns. The first sign of trouble wasn't a ship. It was silence. 3 outposts upon the fringe routes, Arbor Relay, Nestor Hollow, and Cradle 8, stopped transmitting within the same 20-minute window. No comms, no emergency pings, no navigation beacons. Just blank. June stared at the dead channels, her face pale. "That's not a blackout." Arg was already strapping into the Dust Widow's command seat. "That's a purge." The next hour confirmed it. Helix destroyers, 3 of them, all flagship class, had emerged from covert jumps at the edge of the Syrinx expanse, hunting isolated stations and support ships. They were fast, methodical, brutal. Each target went dark within minutes. No survivors. Arg paced the ops deck of Vega Point, the sound of boots and shouted orders echoing through the reinforced corridors. "They're hitting soft targets," said Mara, pointing at the holomap. "Unarmed stations, logistic points, relay hubs. They're gutting our infrastructure first." "Bleeding us before the real strike," June added. Arg looked at them both, face like stone. "Then we make it cost them." The call to arms. The first emergency sorties launched before the full strategy was even written. Patchwork convoys, converted mining barges, retrofitted tugs with railgun pods bolted to their spines. It was chaos. Beautiful, angry, desperate chaos. They poured out of Vega Point, Zevra, Verdin Hollow, even half-abandoned rigs in the Neton fracture. No uniforms, no fleet insignias. Just names stenciled on hulls and hearts that had finally decided they'd rather die fighting than live under a boot. They hit Helix at the Black Gate, a narrow corridor of drifting rocks and broken satellites long used as a smuggler's shortcut, now a choke point Helix hadn't expected to be so fiercely contested. Arg led the charge. The Dust Widow screamed through the asteroid debris, hull shivering under the force of evasive burns. Behind him, 2 freighters broke formation to flank a Helix corvette that was lancing the void with particle bursts. "On my mark," Arg said, tone cold. 3, 2, now. Thump. A cloud of magnesium flares detonated, blinding the corvette sensors for just long enough. The freighter slammed missile pods into its underbelly. It didn't explode. It folded inward, crumpling, venting bleeding air and fire. Arg didn't cheer. He banked and moved on. Rel's voice was steady in Arg's ears. "The Violet Hammer is down. Took a hit near its drive coils. No ejection signal." Arg's knuckles whitened on the throttle. "They were just kids." Rel said nothing. Didn't need to. A moment later, another ship, the Knuckle Dust, collided with a Helix gunship mid-maneuver. Neither survived. The impact shattered both ships in a silent firestorm. Then came the boarding. Mara's team breached the hull of the Helix command cutter, drifting near the wreckage of Cradle 8. The footage streamed back, helmet cams stuttering with gunfire. The red wash of emergency lighting screams through the vacuum-cracked visors. She kicked through a bulkhead, plasma torch in one hand, sidearm in the other. Her voice came through the comms. "Deck's clear. Moving to command." A second later, shouts, flash grenades, blood smeared against the wall. The last image was her blade sliding into a Helix lieutenant's throat. No hesitation. By hour 6, Helix began pulling back. But not before they glassed the remains of Nestor Hollow, even though they knew there were still wounded inside. Even though they knew the Resistance was watching. Especially because they knew. The belt had held. Barely. At great cost. Vega Point's med bay overflowed. June moved between cots, triaging wounds with her sleeves rolled up and dried blood on her palms. Arg stood in the corner, silent, arms crossed, watching. Mara entered later, limping, armor scorched, eyes hollow. "We took their bridge," she said. "Left the rest to drift." Arg just nodded. Later, in the dim glow of the Dust Widow's bridge, Arg sat alone. His face was hard, eyes rimmed red from exhaustion, the hum of life support the only sound. Rel chimed in. "We've got more people requesting entry into the Resistance. Fighters, techs, families even. They saw what happened today. They want in." Arg didn't answer immediately. He looked out into the void as if expecting Tara's voice. And maybe, in some part, he heard it. "Still breathing?" "Barely," he whispered back. Then louder. "Rel, bring up a list of jump-capable assets. We're going to need more than fire next time." Chapter 27. Twin Strikes. It was time to hit back. Not with scattered raids or sabotage runs. This time, the belt would strike Helix where it hurts. Fuel and control. Arg stood in Vega Point's operations hub as the lights flickered slightly, power grids straining under the sheer number of new arrivals and jump prep. On the main table, a layered projection of Helix territory glowed. 2 red pulses marked the objectives: Fuel Array 9, buried in the Skarn Drift, and Comspire Theta, tethered in orbit around the dead rock of Pendar 4. He leaned over the table, tired but composed. "These 2 are the throat and spine of their fleet in this sector," Arg said, voice gravelly. "They control their burn time and their communication range." He pointed at the fuel array first. "Helix can't keep fielding half a dozen blockade squadrons without this. It's massive. Part refinery, part fuel bank. And every day it runs, more ships can cross the belt without even burning a drum of reaction mass." Then to the Comspire. "And this one's worse. That's the leash. Every one of their long-range pings, sync ops, patrol formations, they all run through it. Without Theta, they're blind, deaf, separated." The table fell silent. No one argued. June stepped forward. "We hit them both at the same time. Makes them think we got more forces than they do." Arg nodded. "And we make sure the whole damn belt sees it." Celine Rafe's ship, the Worm's Hold, dropped out of FTL like a thrown blade. Skarn Drift welcomed them with a roiling wall of magnetic storms. Green and orange arcs of ionized gas flashing around the ancient orbital structure of FFA-9, the largest fuel facility Helix maintained in the region. Massive tethers held tanks the size of city blocks in place. Hundreds of Helix drones patrolled the outer orbit like blood cells around a wound. "EMP's loaded," Celine said to her gunner. "Get us inside." 4 mining barges followed her in formation. None of them were built for war, but they carried hell in their bellies. The first wave was all static and flame. An electromagnetic pulse fried every defense satellite's targeting matrix in a half-click radius. Auto turrets jittered and died. Drones spun out or blinked offline. And that was all the opening they needed. "Push now!" The Worm's Hold slammed through the refueling rings and opened up with Trin-Wero guns, shattering the outer conduits. A second barge, the Gray Bird, slammed a breaching shell into the fuel node's spine, then detached its front cabin, which latched on like a tick. Boarders poured in. Inside the refinery, the air was thick with smoke and machine oil. Hallways ran with coolant and blood. Celine's teams moved room by room, engaged in gunfights so close the walls blackened from the flash heat. One of her engineers screamed as a Helix trooper cut him nearly in half with a Ripper drone, rotary blades on a tethered leash. She shot the Helix man's center mass, twice, then tossed a proximity charge into the drone's path. It detonated mid-spin, flinging body parts and steel against the ceiling. They breached the core. "Keep breathing. One more corridor." Laya Kest wiped blood from her palm. Not hers. A guard's. She'd taken the man out when he caught her rerouting conduit power 2 levels up. Now she was in the uplink chamber of Comspire Theta, an elegant narrow tower stretching above Pendar 4's atmosphere, fed by solar wings and housing 100,000 comm lines from low-orbit command to deep patrol fleets. Helix's nerve center. June arrived 15 minutes later, along with 3 stealth crews who had launched from Vega Point in hull camouflage transports. They dropped onto the outer ring while Laya shut down secondary surveillance manually from inside. It wasn't clean. An alarm tripped. A Helix rapid response squad appeared out of nowhere. 5 armored personnel who opened fire without hesitation. The entry hall became a kill box. June dove behind a pillar as 3 of her forward techs were gunned down. One of them a 19-year-old girl named Rissa, who screamed once before a round punched through her suit and out the other side. June dragged her into cover, blood soaking her gloves. Rissa's body limped and eyes wide. "Push through!" June yelled, raw and hoarse. They countered with a flash charge and a haptic grenade. The hallway trembled as the Helix squad was tossed aside in a shudder of kinetic force and light. Leah forced the uplink core open. "Spiking now," she called, fingers flying over the cracked circuitry. "It'll burn everything." "Good," June said, wiping blood from her cheeks. "Let them go dark." Celine's team retreated from FFA-9 just as their final thermal charge hit the facility's pressurized core. The explosion didn't just destroy the tank. It ignited the entire reaction grid, creating a nuclear chain that sent shockwaves through space. A third of the orbital array cracked and folded inward. Flame shot through vacuum, plasma bloom trailing across the stormlit sky. The refinery was gone. At the same time, Comspire Theta's virus took hold. Every relay across the sector blinked off. Helix vessels scrambled as technical overlays crashed. Autosynchronization collapsed. Fleet chatter was reduced to low-band backup channels. Then June's charges went off inside the Comspire's processing core. A flash. A slow, dying spin as the tower broke apart, raining debris across the high orbit of Pendar 4 like a mechanical hailstorm. Inside the Dust Widow, the command center was still dim from low-power routing. Sparks snapped quietly behind exposed panels. The console flickered orange and blue as the last traces of the twin strikes fed back into Arg's systems, fuel burning in vacuum, the shattered Comspire spiraling into pieces across orbit. Arg sat forward in his chair, tired, smeared with smoke and grime. A cut still crusted on his temple. Behind his eyes, fire, grief, and iron. He keyed the uplink. The video light turned green. "This is Arg Arsten of the Dust Widow. You know my name. You know what I do. And if you're watching this, it means you saw what just happened. We've spent years out here surviving, scraping, watching Helix grow bolder, crueler, more organized, watching them choke out the last breath of freedom from this belt one relay station at a time. You want to know why we hit them today? Why we tore down their refinery? Why we shut off their comms?" Arg leaned closer to the camera. "Because it was never just about fighting back. It was about sending a message. You don't get to own the void just because you have a bigger fleet. You don't get to write the rules in a place where people bleed just to live another day. You made this personal the moment you decided some lives mattered more than others. The moment you made survival an act of rebellion." He paused, breathing heavily. "Today was proof you're not invincible." Rel's voice cut into sharply over the comms. "Helix will retaliate. Hard." Arg didn't look away from the camera. His voice dropped. "I'm counting on it." He stood. "Because that was just part of the plan today." He reached forward, hit the uplink switch. The screen went black. Chapter 28. Ashes of Innocence. They struck without warning. No declaration, no fleet movement, no warning pings or intercepted comms. Just death. Delivered like a curse, whispered in the dark. The school dome on Noxus Manor had been neutral ground for years. A fragile agreement between station administrators and Helix patrols had kept it marked safe even during past escalations. Teachers rotated from station to station, offering Belt children education, stability, some version of a future. That morning, a class of 12 children, ages 6 to 11, was studying orbital mechanics, watching dusty models of moons spin around their teacher's desk. The first missile hit at 0814, the second at 0816. Emergency services never got there in time. The dome ruptured instantly, the pressure lost explosive. Half the children were gone in seconds, sucked through the shattered windows, bodies flung like rag dolls against the far wall of the inner shell. The others died slower, crushed beneath collapsed supports, burned in the aftershock, screaming as the walls caved in around them. Footage from a nearby mining drone caught the last living image of the school. A teacher huddled over two students, shielding them with her body as a metal beam fell through the ceiling like a guillotine. All of them were found fused together, charred. The Valtrain Med Hab was over capacity before the war even started. Now its wards overflowed with burn victims, crash survivors, and half-mended soldiers who had fought in the Black Gate or Calm Spire skirmishes. There were no guards, no weapons, only nurses, surgeons, and families clinging to hope. Helix hit it with a kinetic rod strike from high orbit. No warhead, just velocity and mass. A steel spike, 30 feet long, traveled at orbit speeds, slammed into the top of the facility. The impact turned 10 floors into molten glass and fractured steel. The pediatric ward was on the top floor. No one made it out. News spread like radiation. Fast, burning, unstoppable. Hundreds dead. Children's, patients, doctors, volunteers. Unarmed, unprotected, innocent. Footage poured in. Bloody corridors, tiny bodies wrapped in makeshift tarps. Mothers screaming into collapsed rubble as rescue crews tried to pry open cracked bulkheads. A child's oxygen mask still clutched in his hand. A prosthetic limb fused to a bed frame. The silence afterward was louder than the bombs. Arg sat motionless in the Dust Widow's recording bay. His face was hollow, ash-smudged, like the pain had hollowed him from the inside. Behind him, video stills from both attacks played in loop in a corner of the screen, silent horrors framed in red. He didn't speak at first. He just stared. Then, "There's a line, even in war, even when people are desperate, a line you don't cross." His hands trembled as he leaned closer to the camera. "They crossed it. No hospitals, no schools, no kids. You don't touch the unarmed. You don't punish people for surviving." His voice cracked. You don't do what they just did. Helix just made this personal for everyone in the belt. Every parent, every medic, every teacher. You think we were dangerous before? You think we were just scattered miners and angry loners? A beat. You're about to see what happens to people who have nothing left. Stand together. This is no longer a rebellion. It's a reckoning. He killed the feed. The lights on the old command decks flickered as Arg stood before the camera. This wasn't the quiet dark of the Dust Widow. This wasn't grief spilling over. This was declaration. Screens behind him showed the wreckage on loop. Images the belt wouldn't stop watching. Hospitals burning. Children's toys found in rubble. Blood pooled in sterile white corridors. This is Arg. I'm speaking now, not as a miter, not as a survivor, but as someone who's done waiting. He looked directly into the lens. No hesitation now. You've seen the footage. You know what they did. No need for speeches about innocence. You can't unsee it. Helix bombed children. Helix cratered a med hab with kinetic strikes meant for hardened bunkers. This wasn't collateral. It was message sent. He paced once, turning, the shadows playing across his face. They wanted fear. They'll get fury instead. To every pilot with a cracked hull and a cracked nav suite, we need you. To every station tech with a spare reactor coil, rig it,
We're running hot. To the families who've lost too much to be afraid anymore, stand tall, because Helix just proved they'll kill you whether you resist or not.
His hand gripped the edge of the console. The anger in his voice now had focus.
You don't win against a machine like Helix by hiding. You win by making it choke on the ashes of everything it tried to claim.
He exhaled slowly.
From this point forward, we don't just fight. We break them. We erase their footholds. We take their fuel. We blind their fleets. We make every inch of the belt cost.
He looked back to the lens one final time. Jaw set.
You wanted a war, Helix? You've got one.
He raised 2 fingers. Rill, standing behind the cam node, gave a nod and punched the wide broadcast trigger. The message surged across the belt, every comm net in the belt, into pirate relays, automated hauler channels, smuggler ping nets, and outer station repeaters. Chapter 29. The War Council. The chamber reeked of old coolant, steel sweat, and tension. It wasn't built for diplomacy. This was an abandoned assembly floor deep in Vega Point Station, once used for hole welding. Now it held a jury-rigged circular table of reassembled pressure panels, crates, and salvage command screens. Around it stood the wild tangle of the belt's resistance. Smugglers with cybernetic eyes and stolen Helix guns. Old stationers with weld scars and vacuum calluses on their knuckles. Hackers in mismatched suits patched together with foil and fiber. Freighter captains, pirate queens, cargo haulers turned blockade runners, and miners. A lot of miners. Dust-covered, grizzled, half of them older than the war. A hollow buzz echoed through the chamber as the meeting began. Hollow maps shimmered across the center of the table, showing key Helix installations, their fleet vectors, and estimated strength grids in red and orange. Someone coughed. Another cracked their neck. Boots shuffled on metal. And then the shouting began. Roach Fleet has the most coordinated command tree. We should take the lead. Coordination doesn't mean a damn thing when half your ships are repurposed tugs. We need firepower. Firepower? You think blasting forward's a plan? You want another medhab turned to glass? We need a tactician, not a martyr. And who do you suggest? You couldn't find your own rear end with 2 hands and a nav beacon. Screw you, Jaren. My people actually showed up. Yeah, and you bring anything other than smoke and attitude? Arg leaned back against the support beam, watching. He didn't speak. Not yet. Let them vent. Let the pride boil up and fear run its course. They were scared, even if none would admit it. He saw it in the way they were overcompensating, snapping at allies, boasting of battles half won or barely survived. But the longer it wore on, the more it grated. They weren't getting anywhere. They were unraveling. June looked at him from across the table. Her jaw was tight. She could feel it too. How easily this moment could fall apart. How this fire could eat itself before it even reached the enemy. A captain from the Mars Runner Brigade slammed her fist on the table. I'm not letting some ghost miner with a half-famous video log steer my ships. The room turned towards Arg then. Even the arguing slowed. June's eyes widened slightly. Arg's face didn't move. Until... bang! His hand slammed down on a metal panel near the edge of the table with a force that echoed across the chamber like a shot. Silence. Instant. No more shuffling. No coughing. Every pair of eyes locked onto him. Arg stood straight, broad, battle-worn. The shadow of war hollowing his cheeks and fire etched into the lines around his eyes. And he spoke. Not loudly, but clear enough to slice through the tension like a blade.
There is nobody other than me to fill that role, as much as I don't want it.
He paused, letting the weight fall.
I am the leader of this.
No protest came, just breathing, swallowed pride. The room shifted on its bones. He let the silence stretch, then stepped forward.
I didn't ask for it. I didn't plan for it. Hell, I've spent most of my life doing everything I could to be alone. But here we are. You all came because you knew something had to be done. You saw the blood, the bodies, the kids, and you showed up.
He swept his eyes over them, scanning the old haulers, the young gunners, the rough captains still ready to argue if they had a reason.
So let's stop pretending this is about ego or command trees or fleet logs. We don't have the luxury of organization. We have grit, rage, and the truth.
He pointed to the flickering map.
They've got the machines. We've got the reasons. That's how you win a war.
He turned back to the room.
So here's the deal. I lead, but I don't dictate. We plan together. We fight smart. We stay free. Anyone can walk away now. No shame, no blame. But if you stay, you follow my lead.
June stepped up beside him, arms crossed. Anyone want to eject now? Nobody did. Not even the Mars runner captain. The War Council had its leader, and the Belt had its reckoning. Chapter 30. Fire on the Map. The chamber lights dimmed as Rel activated the new hollow projection. Twin globes of the Belt, twisting in 3D relief, shimmered above the war table, slowly rotating under the burn of dozens of link satellites and recon pings. Every point of red marked a Helix installation. Every blue dot, a known Belt-friendly zone. Between them, vast fields of contested rock, drifting debris, and deadly silence. Arg stood at the head of the table. Around him, June, Rel, Captain Voss from the Mars Runners, Smuggler-turned-command, Thalia Morn, the Black Swan hacker clique in glowing goggles, and 24 others. A patchwork alliance of outcasts, rebels, and survivors. The room smelled of ozone and machine oil. Weapons leaned against every wall.
We don't hit them where they expect us to,
Arg said, voice steady, calm.
We make them flinch.
Rel manipulated the interface, zooming the map on Eris Relay, a major Helix outpost. They'll be moving everything to cover Eris, Rel said. They'll expect a revenge strike on something symbolic.
They're wrong, Arg said. We're not chasing symbols.
June stepped in, tapping a smaller node on the edge of the belt. This, she said, this is Vandalus Station. It's low tier, mostly logistics, but it's their fuel lifeline for the outer patrol fleet.
And if it goes, their forward line dies in the cold,
Arg finished. And Helix knows it, Voss added. It'll be well guarded. Arg turned to the smuggler, Thalia Morn.
That's why your crew goes first.
Thalia raised an eyebrow. You want the Black Suns to take on point?
You've got the fastest blockade skippers in the region. You're not going in to fight. You're going in to draw.
A pause. She smiled. Decoys. I can live with that. Arg nodded.
You fake a strike on Eris, make it loud, scatter probes, make them think you're headed for something prestigious.
June continued. When Helix fleet pulls from Vandalus to reinforce Eris, the second wave hits the actual target.
And who's the second wave?
Asked Voss. Arg turned to him.
You are.
The plan started to bloom. The Mars Runner brigades, using heavy haulers retrofitted with kinetic batteries, would breach Vandalus's outer shield and net. A wedge of mobile miners, armor reinforced with ship hull plating, would punch through behind them. Simultaneously, a dozen autonomous drone rigs, deployed from stealth ships, would detonate remote EMPs near the fuel processing arrays. Thalia's ship would loop back around during the strike, dropping sabotage teams via disposable pods. Small, fast, one way. June pointed to another node, Carthus Relay. While they're scrambling to defend Vandalus, we hit Carthus, their broadcast relay hub for half the eastern belt. Rel added, We've preloaded signal corruption viruses. If we breach the perimeter, the broadcast net collapses. It'll throw their communications into chaos, June said. They won't be able to coordinate responses across sector. Arg tapped the sequence on the display, highlighting a zigzag route cutting through Helix patrol zones.
This is the vector I'll fly, the Dust Widow. I'll trail the Mars Runner assault with a lead formation. Cut in fast. Drop a localized relay jammer to blind any stragglers trying to ping reinforcements.
Solo run? Voss asked. Arg nodded.
It's what I'm good at.
June shot him a warning look. Not if it's suicide. Arg didn't blink.
We're past safe.
The room quieted as the final formation locked into the table's display. It looked like a mess, intersecting arrows, scattershot ship groups, three-prong movements across open space. But it wasn't chaos. It was belt tactics. Ugly, improvised, relentless. Rel finalized the diagram and added the labels. Fire weave. Operation Phase 1. Commence in 30 hours. Arg looked at every face around the room.
You all have your targets, your windows. This will move fast. If one fails, the rest collapse.
He paused.
But if it works...
June stepped in beside him. We'll crack their arm and blind their eyes in one blow, Arg finished.
And that's when we start driving the knife in.
The war had a plan. The belt had teeth. June stood at a gutted cargo hold that now served as a makeshift armory. She moved through rows of crates filled with reclaimed weapons, pulse rifles scoured of old blood, welded launchers patched with conduit tape, railgun batteries charged to half capacity but still deadly. Volunteers moved around her like an ant hive. Engineers fitting exo rigs, teens tightening straps on helmets still too big for them. She pulled a battered jacket from her rack, faded station stripes and scorch marks along the collar, and slung it over her shoulder. One of the kids, no older than 16, approached her, clutching a datapad. You June Varick? She nodded. Heard you held the med quarter on Kovac during the burn. June looked at the pad, a list of volunteers, names without ranks, assignments scribbled beside them. I didn't hold it, she said. I survived it. Everyone else held it. The kid didn't reply, just stood straighter. June signed the pad and handed it back. Gear up. We move fast and we hit hard. No speeches. The kid grinned, nodded, and sprinted off. June let the moment linger, then turned to the lines of ships docked in the far edge of the bay. Rig transports, miners turned gunboats, a few sleek blockade runners glowing with hidden Helix techs. She exhaled. Burn 'em all. Thalia Morn leaned against the hull of her ship, crow's bite, sipping a drink made of something that had probably once been legal. Around her, the alley buzzed with activity. Crews welding over gun emplacements, runners loading crates of high-yield decoys into modified cargo ports. She watched her second-in-command, a wiry woman named Rek, finish sealing a launch pod designed to carry a single passenger and enough explosives to vaporize a hangar bay. We're ghosts again, Rek said. Loud ghosts. Thalia smirked. I always said if I go out, it'll be in fire and spite. A Helix drone skull, charred and mounted like a hood ornament, hung from the ship's nose. She pointed to it. Time to bring some nightmare back to their doorsteps. The hum of ancient servers and volatile drives pulsed through the air like a heartbeat. Rel moved between data towers, rerouting subspace bursts and loading worm payloads into disposable chips. His hands blurred as he checked code, routed false signals, and mapped infiltration vectors into Helix's relay matrix. His face was focused, eyes sharp. If we don't strike them here, he murmured, their fleets will crush us before we ever see the fight. He plugged the final chip into a relay spike and sent the pulse upstream towards the command deck. In the Carthon drift, welders clamped breaching torches onto Helix hull stolen months ago. On Oriel Station, a teacher handed her class over to an evac shuttle and stayed behind to rig a medical bay as a triage hub. In Nomad Reef, a pirate captain handed out weapons she once hoarded and told her crew, "This isn't about coin anymore." And in the Pythos caves, miners who had never held rifles strapped on stolen armor and practiced aiming in silence, eyes sharp, unshaken. The belt moved, not as a nation, not as an army, but his one wound finally bleeding towards retribution. Arg moved through the Dust Widow like he had 1,000 times before. But tonight, every creak and hum of the old ship felt heavier. The silence wasn't empty. It was charged, like the calm before a storm, too big to ignore. He paused by the main corridor, tracing his fingers over the scars on the wall, each one a reminder of fights survived, losses carried, and the loneliness that followed. A coolant leak patched in haste, a dent from an EVA gone wrong, a gouge from anger and frustration. Standing at the console, Arg opened the vid recorder. The red light blinked steadily. He took a breath.
This isn't just another mission. It's everything we've been fighting for. Our homes, our people, our freedom. It's the line we refuse to let them cross.
His voice was steady but low, heavy with the weight of what was coming.
I don't pretend this will be easy, or that any of us will come out the same. But I'm here, and I'm ready. Not because I want to be a hero, because no one else will do it.
He looked around the cabin, the quiet hum of the Dust Widow, a small comfort.
Whatever happens next, we fight. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who can't.
He tapped the console, ending the recording. Then, voice barely above a whisper,
let's get to work.
Chapter 31. Fire in the Void. The steady pulse of the Dust Widow's engines was the only constant in the endless darkness outside the cockpit window. Space stretched out like a frozen ocean, distant stars like scattered diamonds, cold and indifferent. But inside, tension coiled tight like a spring ready to snap. Arg sat rigid in his pilot's chair, eyes never leaving the hollow map hovering right before him. Every blinking light represented a ship, a person, a life on edge. 57 vessels moving in grim formation across the void. Miners, smugglers, freighters converted for war, battered corvettes, and a handful of small gunships, all steeled for what lay ahead. The Helix fuel depot and the communication node. Heartbeats of the enemy's grip in this sector. Echo's voice cut through the cockpit's ambient hum, calm, precise, digital, but somehow comforting. Estimated time to target, 3 hours, 15 minutes. Fuel reserves at 83%. Navigation vector stable. Environmental systems nominal. Arg let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. 3 hours. A lifetime and a heartbeat, depending upon what came next. Behind him, the cockpit's secondary screens flickered with live feeds from the fleet. Faces of the brave, the desperate, and the determined glimmered in the half-light of consoles. Engineers running final systems checks. Gunners loading pulse cannons and kinetic slugs. Medics sealing microfractures with nanopaste. June's face flashed on the comm channel, dark eyes burning beneath her helmet's visor. Alpha squad scanning by. Weapons hot, shields up, no hesitation. Her voice was steady as ever, but Arg knew the weight she carried. June wasn't just a captain. She was a symbol of survival for many in the belt. Her ship, the Vega Spine, was a scarred warhorse with more stories than years, and her crew trusted her with their lives.
Understood,
Arg replied softly.
See you at the breach.
Rel's voice, rough but controlled, joined the comms from the Hobbler's Echo, a converted freighter that now served as a drone carrier and an electronic warfare platform. Jamming drones deployed, spread wide, set to maximum interference. We'll blind their sensors and scramble their comms as long as we keep our heads low. Arg glanced sideways at the hollow screen displaying the faint shimmer of the drone cloud, tiny shapes blinking like fireflies scattered in formation. We'll keep the civilian lanes clear, Rel added, his tone grim. No room for mistakes. Arg nodded. Though Rel couldn't see him, the risks were enormous. One wrong move, one slip of detection, and the Helix fleet would descend like a pack of wolves. For a moment, Arg's mind wandered, a brief, bittersweet flicker of Tara's face, her calm smile, the way she could fill a room with quiet light without saying a word, the soft cadence of her voice as she walked through their home on Earth, now so far away. Still focused, he told himself, this is bigger than us, for her, for everyone we've lost. Echo's voice snapped back at him. Adjusting the vector for final approach, deploying sensor ghosts and false signatures to mask our heat signatures. Expect heightened countermeasures in 10 minutes. Arg's hands tightened at the control column as the stars ahead grew sharper. The distant silhouette of Vandalus orbiting Fuel Depot appeared. A massive, cold ring of metal, darkened by shadow and scarred from decades of use. Its twin, the communications node, gleamed further out, sleek, angular, and humming with lethal potential. The fleet kept formation, drifting through the void like ghosts. No radio chatter, except encrypted bursts. Every pilot, every gunner, every crew member locked into their roles. June's voice again, calm but resolute. No distractions. This is the moment we hit back. Rel's freighter rumbled softly beside the Dust Widow. Echo will keep you covered. Just make sure you punch through their defenses. Arg swallowed hard, sensing the weight of every ship behind him. Miners who'd never fired weapons before. Smugglers turned soldiers. The countless souls who had no choice but to fight for their freedom. Time crawled. Seconds bled into minutes. And then, Echo whispered, incoming sensor pings. Helix patrol corvette approximately 6,000 kilometers off your port bow. They haven't raised alarm yet. Arg's pulse quickened.
Ready weapons. Hold fire until we hit the suppression zone.
The Dust Widow's systems hummed to life. Weapon relays charging. Shielding cycling faster. He felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, cold and electric. The corvette slipped silently along its patrol route, unaware of the storm bearing down. Arg glanced one last time at the feet of the fleet behind him, their silent resolve mirrored on every face.
We're the belt,
he said softly, to no one but himself.
And we're not giving up.
The hum of the engines filled the void, but inside the cockpits of the fleet, a different kind of noise buzzed. The silent rattle of nerves, the tight grip of memories, and the unspoken questions hanging in the air. June sat forward in the Vega Spine's pilot chair, her gloved hands steady on her controls. Behind her, her gunner paced quietly, checking and rechecking the pulse cannon's cooling array. June's jaw tightened as her thoughts drifted toward Zavari, the school that had gone dark, the cries that still echoed in her mind. We're not just shooting ships, she said softly, almost to herself. We're fighting ghosts. And for every kid who never saw tomorrow. Her gunner nodded.
We'll make them pay.
Yeah, June said, eyes narrowing. Make sure they remember the belt. Ralph sat alone in the Howler's Echo command chair, eyes flickering between the electronics warfare consoles and the outside stars. He didn't often speak much, but his silence carried weight. A former corporate pilot turned rebel, he knew the stakes better than most. A message popped up on his comm. A miner volunteering extra fuel reserves. Rel's lips twitched in a rare, grim smile. We're all in this together, he murmured. Echo's voice chimed in over the comm. Signal interference stable. Jamming drones holding formation. Rel nodded. Good. We keep them blind. No one sees us coming. Lyra, captain of the Sablehawk, a small but fast strike ship, ran her fingers over a worn photo taped to her dashboard. The faded image of her daughter before the Helix raids. This ends soon, she whispered, her voice a vow. Back in the Dust Widow's cockpit, Arg fought to keep his mind clear. Tara's laugh, her calm. If she were here, she'd say, one step at a time. Echo's voice interrupted the thoughts. Contact detected. Helix patrols increasing. 3 corvettes now within range. We have 30 seconds to engage or evade. Arg's hands flexed on the controls.
Hold formation. Prepare to deploy countermeasures. Stay sharp.
The fleet's engines flared as they dropped from stealth. Lights flickered on the hulls, ready for war. Arg's voice came steady on the comms.
All units, this is it. Strike hard, strike fast. We don't leave a corner untouched.
Chapter 32. The First Strike. The silence of space shattered into a cacophony of fire and fury. The Dust Widow trembled violently as a hailstorm of plasma bolts and kinetic rounds tore through the void. Explosions blossomed across the massive Helix fuel depot's hull, painting the blackness with bursts of orange and white. Jagged chunks of metal and fiery debris drifted outward like deadly stars. Arg's hands were steady on the controls despite the pounding in his chest. His eyes darted between sensor feeds in the viewport, calculating angles, speeds, threats. Shields dipping to 45%. Multiple breaches detected. Echo's voice remained eerily calm, a digital lighthouse amid the storm.
Divert all power to forward shields and engines. We're going to need to stay mobile,
Arg commanded, pushing the engines to their limits. The old rig groaned in protest, but held steady. The fuel depot itself was a fortress of industry. Thick armor plating, a lattice of support struts, and towering spires where fuel was pumped, cooled, and stored. But now it was a wounded beast, flames licking through the ruptured compartments, alarms blaring in sync with distant impacts. June's Vega spine streaked like a vengeful comet through the melee, her pulse cannons splitting charged particles that shredded Helix corvettes with surgical precision. Each salvo carved glowing holes in enemy shields, sending fighters tumbling helplessly into the void.
Focus on their heat exchangers,
Arg barked, voice tight.
If those go, this whole depot cooks off.
The torch veil rumbled forward, a hulking missile barge carrying firepower meant to turn the tide. With a roar, it launched a volley of smart warheads that punched through the depot's outer defenses. The resulting chain reaction ignited a catastrophic firestorm, sending out shockwaves that rattled every ship nearby. Inside the Dust Widow, the cockpit shook as the shockwave passed, consoles flickering under the strain. Hull integrity critical, now at 18%, Echo warned. Arg's jaws clenched. The Widow was a battered old rig, no warship, but she was his home, his lifeline. Ahead, a Helix fighter broke through the outer ring of the fleet, blazing a missile lock onto the Widow.
Evasive maneuvers,
Arg snapped, twisting the ship hard toward a narrow cluster of asteroids. The missile streaked after him like a serpent of fire, but just as it closed in, Echo triggered a pulse of electromagnetic interference. The missile flared erratically, veering off course and detonating harmlessly.
Nice work, Echo,
Arg muttered, sweat dripping into his eyes. Meanwhile, Rel's Howler Echo surged through the chaos, releasing a cloud of drone swarms that hummed like angry hornets, their interference scrambling Helix targeting arrays, throwing off enemy aim and jamming communications. The freighter's crew opened fire with improvised railguns, pounding isolated fighters to scrap. On board, the tension was palpable. Every hit was a brush with death, every explosion a reminder of what was at stake. The comm node loomed in the distance, smaller but crucial, pulsing with the lifeblood of Helix communications and control. Arg's comm cracked.
June, coordinate with your strike team, too. Comm node is your priority.
Her voice came back hard and resolute. We're moving in. No survivors. The Dust Widow surged forward, weaving through fiery debris and scattered remnants of corvettes. Arg's thoughts flickered to Terra. Her calm voice, steady presence. She'd say, One breath at a time, Arg. You've got this.
We do this for all of us,
he whispered, gripping the controls tighter as he closed in on the heart of the enemy's network. The battle raged around him, but this was only the beginning. Chapter 33. Breaking the Spine. The Dust Widow groaned as it dove deeper into the heart of the Helix fuel depot's defenses. Metal groaned and sparks flew across the cockpit console, a brutal reminder that Arg was pushing his ship far beyond her limits. Outside, the glow of distant explosions cast eerie shadows across the cold blackness of space. Echo's voice was steady, but laced with urgency. Shields failing. Hull breach increasing. Estimated structural failure in 5 minutes without immediate repair. Arg gritted his teeth.
Hold together, old girl. Just a little longer.
The fuel depot was now a hellscape of fire and debris. sections rupturing and spewing volatile gases into the void. The massive storage tanks ignited one by one, each explosion sending shockwaves that rippled through the fleet. June's Vega spine was a blur of movement, weaving through the flak and laser fire to deliver crippling blows to the depot's critical systems. "Alpha Squadron taking heavy damage," her voice crackled over the comms. "We're losing 2 ships." Rel's howler echo fired off a barrage of electronic pulses, scrambling Helix sensor grids and rendering their defensive turrets nearly blind. Drones swarmed enemy vessels, tearing into hulls with razor-sharp claws. Arg felt every hit as if it was his own flesh being torn.
"Echo, divert all remaining power to engines and forward shields. We're breaking through to that comm node,"
he ordered. Ahead, the communications node loomed, a sleek, angular structure bristling with antennae and transmission arrays. It was the nerve center for Helix's operations in this sector. Take it down, and the enemy's coordination would crumble. The first wave of Helix corvettes converged to defend it, their weapons blazing with lethal precision. Arg dodged and weaved. The Widow's hull groaned under the strain. Suddenly a missile slammed into the starboard side, sending the ship into a violent spin. Alarms screamed as power flickered and systems went dark. "Hull breach on starboard engine. Pressure dropping," Echo warned. Arg fought the controls, sweat stinging his eyes. The ship shuddered violently but refused to die. He heard June's voice, fierce and steady. "We're with you, Arg. Push through!" With a roar, the Dust Widow surged forward, breaking the corvette line. The fleet followed, firing everything they had. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers all around the comm node. Missiles tore into antenna arrays, weapons disabled, communications scrambled. Rel's drones infiltrated the node's internal defenses, detonating charges that ripped through vital circuits. The node shuddered, systems failing. On the comms, Arg's voice rose, raw and commanding.
"This is the belt. Helix control is broken. They can't coordinate. We own this fight."
But victory came at a steep price. Around them, ships burned and drifted silent. The toll was heavy. Men and women who'd risk everything to push back tyranny. Arg's chest tightened with the grief and determination. This is for Terra. This is for everyone who never had a chance. As the last of the node's defenses collapsed, Arg caught a glimpse of the burning depot behind them, a shattered monument to Helix's grip on the belt. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Chapter 34. After the Fire. The silence that followed the blast was a vacuum louder than any cannon fire. Outside the cracked viewport, the vast expanse of space stretched out, littered with the broken remains of ships that had once roared with life and purpose. Jagged shards of metal spun slowly, tracing lazy arcs against the black backdrop. Fires flickered weakly on fractured hulls, sending ghostly orange glows that fought against the infinite dark. Inside the cockpit of the Dust Widow, Arg sat rigid, every muscle tense despite the fatigue that threatened to pull him under. His breath came shallow and uneven, chest rising and falling beneath the faded flight jacket patched with years of repairs. Sweat clung to his skin, cooling quickly in the recycled air, mixing with grease and dirt from endless hours spent patching, rearming, and praying. The ship groaned beneath him, a wounded beast refusing to die. Panels flickered erratically, warning lights pulsed in harsh red, and Echo's calm, steady voice cut through the oppressive quiet. "Structural integrity compromised. Starboard hull breach detected. Oxygen levels at 40%. Life support functioning at reduced capacity. Immediate repair required to maintain survivability." Arg's hands trembled as they hovered over the control panel. He hated that vulnerability, hated the feeling of helplessness creeping into his bones. But he swallowed the rising panic and forced himself to focus.
"Seal starboard breach," he muttered, fingers flying across the touchscreen. "Divert all auxiliary power to life support and emergency systems. Activate secondary oxygen reserves. Run diagnostics on environmental scrubbers."
A brief silence. The Widow responded with a series of mechanical clicks and the slow hiss of air rushing into damaged compartments. The alarms quieted marginally, but the threat was far from over. Arg leaned back in the worn pilot's chair. His eyes flickered to the shattered viewport. The battlefield was a graveyard, strewn with corpses of Helix corvettes and drone swarms, each a testament to the ferocity of the fight. The fuel depot lay in ruins, its twisted superstructure leaking volatile gas that flared in sudden bursts before vanishing into the void. The communications node was dead, a silent sentinel that had fallen. The victory was cold, costly. His throat was dry, a voice raw from hours without rest. He keyed the comm mic, struggling to keep his voice steady.
This isn't over. Helix will hit back harder. They always do, but they underestimate us if they think we'll break.
He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. The solitude pressed in around him. No cheers, no comrades. Just the hum of the machines and the cold black silence.
They've destroyed schools, hospitals, places where hope still clings. They think fear will silence the belt.
A slow breath.
They don't know what the belt really is. They're not just rocks and dust. It's stubbornness, resilience. It's every miner, smuggler, and scavenger who's refused to bow.
His fingers clenched into fists.
I'm no hero. I'm just a man who's tired of running.
Echo's voice interrupted, calm but urgent. Hostile reinforcements detected. Multiple Helix capital ships and freighter squadrons inbound. Estimated time to engagement, 15 minutes. Arg's pulse quickened. He stood, legs shaky but determined, and moved through the narrow corridors to the engineering bay. His hands worked quickly, patching wires, sealing leaks, jury-rigging power reroutes with practice efficiency born of years surviving alone. Every clang of metal, every hiss of escaping air, hammered into him the truth of what was coming. There would be no second chance. Returning to the cockpit, he donned his helmet, the visor sliding down with a hiss, sealing him in against the vacuum. He keyed the channel one last time, eyes fierce.
They want to finish us? To erase the belt from the stars? Well, they'll have to get through me first.
The Widow's engines hummed to life, shields flickering weakly but holding. Alone against the coming storm, Arg gritted his teeth. This fight was far from over. Chapter 35. The Calm Before the Storm. The cold hum of the Dust Widow's engines filled the small cockpit like a heartbeat in a void. Arg sat stiffly in the pilot's chair, fingers drumming absently on the worn armrest. Outside, the endless black streaked on, speckled with distant stars and faint glimmers of wreckage still drifting from the recent battle. His eyes, bloodshot and rimmed with fatigue, flicked over the diagnostic panel. Hull breach is patched but fragile. Shields running at 60% capacity. Life support systems strained but holding. Power reserves dropping steadily. Every system was a thread stretched tight, ready to snap at the first sign of real pressure. Echo's voice broke the silence, steady but with a hint of warning. Helix reinforcements inbound. Estimated time to engagement, 10 minutes. Arg swallowed the lump in his throat and exhaled slowly, steadying himself. His mind flashed briefly to Tara, the soft sound of her laughter, her calm in the eye of the storms that were nothing compared to this. She was gone, but the memories still anchored him, kept him humid amidst the steel and fire. He keyed the channel mic, voice raised but firm.
This is it. The next wave's coming. They want to break us with force to show the belt who's in control.
A bitter smile tugged at his lips.
They don't understand the belt's backbone. They never have.
He reached for the tactical display, fingers tracing the incoming fleet's path. A swarm of sleek Helix fighters backed by 2 capital ships, advanced like predators closing in on wounded prey. Arg's eyes narrowed. His ship was outgunned, outnumbered, and outmatched, but not outwitted. He started running through his checklists, muscle memory kicking in despite the exhaustion. Divert power to forward shields. Activate ECM to scramble targeting sensors. Prep weapon systems, focus on missile launchers and laser arrays. Engage thrusters for evasive maneuvers. His movements were precise but slow, weighed down by fatigue and the relentless pressure. Every decision was critical. One mistake could mean the end. As he finished, Arg leaned back, helmet off, for a moment, letting out a shaky breath. He pressed his palms to his face, rubbing the ache from his eyes. "I'm getting too old for this," he muttered, voice barely above a whisper. The widow shuddered suddenly. Small debris struck the hull, a reminder that enemy was closer than he dared to think. He slammed a fist on the console, a surge of raw determination washing over the weariness. "No room for doubt, no room for fear. Not today." Arg keyed his channel once more, voice rising with grim fire. "To everyone out there, miners, smugglers, solo pilots, this is the time to stand. The belt is not just rock and dust. It's people. It's all of us." His gaze locked on the viewport, the first glints of enemy fighters flashing like deadly fireflies against the stars. "Let them come. We'll show them what it means to fight for freedom." The ship's sensors screamed with incoming contacts. Alarms blared. The Widow's engines roared to life. Shields flares. And Arg threw the ship into motion. The battle was about to begin. The cold steel of the cockpit pressed against his back, a stark reminder of his solitude. Alone. No wingman. No backup. Just him and the Widow, scarred, battered, but alive. Every creak and groan of the ship was a whispered warning, a heartbeat he couldn't ignore. "You're not a kid anymore," the thought hit him like a punch. Not the scrappy miner who first bought this rust bucket. 45 years on this spinning rock, and in this universe doesn't care if you break. He forced himself to breathe steady, to push down the nagging doubt clawing at his mind. The weight of the belt's hopes, fears, and desperation was crushing, but it was also a fuel, sharp and fierce. "They think a handful of ships and fighters can crush us?" The bitterness coiled tight in his chest. They didn't know what it means to live out here, alone in the void, scraping survival from dead rock. His eyes flicked to the tactical display, dots and blips tracking the Helix advance. Numbers, yes, but not the whole story. Every pilot knew the truth. Numbers don't win wars. Grit does. Resolve. The refusal to quit when the world says it's over. Echo's voice, ever steady, cut through the mental storm. "Enemy fighters entering weapon range. Defensive maneuvers recommended." Arg's hands tightened on the controls. Steady. Focus. Suddenly, the hull shuddered as a missile streaked past, detonating in a fireball just off the port bow. The Widow rocked violently, metal groaning. That was too close. He glanced at the damage readout. Minor, but enough to remind him how fragile this all was. Memories flooded in. Tara's face, calm and fierce. A steady presence in the storms far less deadly. The life he'd left behind when the belt swallowed him whole. He touched the worn silver ring on his finger, an anchor in the storm. You fight for them, he thought, for her, for everyone who can't. Another missile launched. Another explosion rocked the ship. Arg's breath hitched, heart pounding as he pushed the Widow hard, dodging, weaving, firing where he could. "I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting for every miner who's ever been told they don't matter." The Widow's laser array flared, cutting through a Helix fighter that came too close. The cockpit filled with the smell of ozone and hot metal. Pain flared sharply in his left shoulder, a shard of flying debris. Ignoring it, he gritted his teeth and kept going. "I'm getting too old for this," he admitted silently. "But I'm not done yet." The enemy closed in again, relentless as a tide. The Widow's shields flickered, dipping dangerously low. This is it. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment. No room for fear. Then he opened them, steady as steel. "Come get me." The Widow shuddered again as enemy fire peppered the hull, each hit rattling the ship's frame like a hammer on rusted iron. Warning sirens screamed, drowning out everything but the roaring in Arg's ears. His visor fogged from sweat as he fought to steady his breath, hands dancing over the controls. Keep moving. Keep fighting. Missiles streaked past, detonating in starbursts that rocked the Widow, lighting the void with deadly blooms. Arg slammed the thrusters, whipping the ship into a jagged barrel roll, evading the lead Helix fighter's targeting lock. The lasers missed by mere centimeters, cutting through the darkness where his head had been moments before. Too close. Too damn close. The Widow's hull integrity dropped another notch. Warning lights blinked frantic red. No time for damage control. Not yet. Arg's teeth clenched as the ship lurched violently. His left shoulder burned with fresh pain. A jagged piece of debris cutting into muscle and bone. He didn't care.
Echo. Status.
His voice was hoarse but steady. Shields holding at 25%. Hull breaches detective on aft starboard. Oxygen levels stable for now. He nodded grimly, already planning repairs for later. Now wasn't the time. Now was fight or die. His fingers hovered over the weapons control, then slammed the fire button. The Widow's missile tube spat fire, tiny streaks of light arcing towards a squadron of fighters closing in fast. Two detonated with brilliant flashes. One spiraled out of control, drifting uselessly away. One less to worry about. Lasers cut across the viewport. A sudden flash and then a sharp vibration as the Helix fighters clipped the Widow's wingtips. Alarm screamed louder. Arg's breath caught. Damage control is going to be a nightmare after this. He drove the ship into a tight corkscrew, evading another wave of missiles. Sweat dripped into his eyes. He wiped it away with the back of his hand, vision swimming for a second. Come on, old man, you're not done yet. Another blast rocked the ship. The lights flickered and the hull moaned like a wounded animal. Arg gritted his teeth, jaw aching from clenching so hard. His mind reeled with memories. Tara's voice, soft and steady, urging calm, reminding him to breathe. He swallowed the knot of panic rising in his chest.
Keep it together, he told himself. You're the last line. The only line.
The Widow fired again, laser arrays burning bright, slicing into an enemy fighter that exploded in a brilliant fireball. The stench of burning metal filled the cockpit as his HUD flickered with alerts. That one's dead, but at what cost? The enemy pressed harder, relentless as a tidal wave. Arg could feel the Widow straining beneath the onslaught, systems failing one by one. His shoulder throbbed, vision tumbled, but the fight burned hotter inside him. I'm not going down here, not like this. He tapped the mic, voice rough but defiant, broadcast to every listener on his channel and beyond.
This is it. The fight for the belt. The fight for freedom. We're battered. We're bruised. But we're still here. And we're not backing down.
Another missile streaked toward him, closer this time. He banked hard, narrowly avoiding the blast, and returned the fire with a fury born of desperation and unyielding will. The Widow groaned. Systems flickered on the edge of collapse. Arg's heart hammered like a war drum. Hold together, old girl. We're not finished yet. Arg's breath came in short, ragged gasps. Warning sirens still blared. The stench of burnt ozone thick in the air. The Dust Widow's systems were battered, barely alive, like him. But she held, just like he did. Smoke curled from a ruptured panel, casting long shadows across the cockpit. The last Helix fighter spiraled away in a broken arc, engines flaring in retreat. A moment of quiet, temporary, brittle, but real. Arg slumped back in his seat, arm pressed tight to the bleeding wound in his side. His eyes closed for a heartbeat. Then two.
I'm still here,
he muttered aloud. Outside the cracked viewport, the stars burned on. Chapter 36. The Belt Remembers. Smoke hung in the air like the memory of a scream. Inside the Dust Widow's dim, flickering cockpit, Arg slowly peeled the compression wrap from his shoulder. The med foam beneath crackled faintly as it dried against the torn flesh. His suit was scorched, the left sleeve nearly black from plasma heat, and every breath came with a price. Ribs weren't broken, but they weren't whole either. He survived, somehow. Outside, debris still drifted. Wreckage spun like vultures. Chunks of Helix steel turning slowly in the dark. The comm node was dark, silent. The fuel depot little more than charred structure and escaping gas. That part of the plan had worked, but Arg knew it came at a cost. The Widow's interior lights buzzed faintly, dimmed to conserve power. Systems had stabilized, barely. Shields were gone. Hull integrity hovered somewhere between hope and scrap. He couldn't fly far, but for now, the Helix fleet had been pushed back. At least, this part of it. He sat in the chair for a long time, helmet beside him, arms resting on his knees. His exhaustion made everything blur. His body wanted to collapse. His mind wouldn't let him. Then he hit record. The feed light blinked red. No dramatic lighting. No music. No editing. Just a man, ragged and bloodied, sitting in a half-ruined cockpit lit by dying instruments and a broken starscape beyond the glass. His voice came low, cracked, but clear. I should be dead. By every right, I shouldn't be sitting here. Helix sent a hammer to break me, and maybe they got close. The Widow's bleeding. I'm bleeding. And I'm guessing half the belt thinks I'm already gone. But I'm not. And if you're hearing this, neither are you. He paused, staring into the lens like it was a person. This fight wasn't just about breaking fuel depots or frying comm nodes. It was a message. Helix made theirs clear months ago. Bomb schools, hit hospitals, silence anyone who speaks against them. And now, we've sent one back. Another pause, longer this time. His throat tightened, thinking of Tara, of her quiet strength, of the miners at Kovac, faces hollowed by fear, of the endless belt, left to starve or surrender. You wanted me to be your symbol? Fine. But I didn't start this fight for glory. I started it to survive. And now I fight so others don't have to run like I did. He glanced out the viewport. More ships were drifting into range, small at first, barely more than dots. Then more. And more. No formation. No uniformity. Just grit and engines. Solo haulers. Old mining barges with external armor plates welded on. A retrofit Corvette with a pirate flag hastily painted on the bright blue. Echo's voice filtered into the cockpit. Incoming transmission bandwidth expanding. 43 new vessels have declared open alignment with your broadcast. Numbers increasing. Arg exhaled through his teeth. He looked back into the lens, voice hardening. You want to know what the belt really is, Helix? It's not dust and rock. It's not systems on the edge of collapse. It's this. Right here. People you don't think would fight. People you left behind. They remember. And they're coming. He stopped recording. No sign-off. No fancy ending. Just truth. The signal was already echoing through the system, bouncing from derelict stations to smugglers' hubs to low-gravity mining colonies long forgotten by central government. Inside a half-functional communications bunker, a group of cyber riggers stared at the feed looping again and again. Arg's image, his voice, his bloodied face. One of them turned slowly toward their leader, a woman with thick gray braids and old Helix prison tattoos. He's alive, she cracked a rare smile. Yeah, and he just lit a damn fire. Captain Maylor watched the broadcast from the cracked monitor in his bridge. Around him, engineers and smugglers were already pulling flight suits over scarred skin. Maylor lit a thin, foul-smelling roll of tobacco and blew the smoke through his nostrils. No way he lasts alone. Fire up the engines. One of his crew glanced at the radar. We'll be spotted the second we break drift. Maylor flicked ash onto the floor. Let them spot us. Arg sat in the cockpit, silent again. He leaned back against the headrest, eyes closed for a moment. Then he cracked one open as Echo spoke again. Long-range signals increasing exponentially. 73 confirmed. 91. 102. More incoming. He opened both eyes now. Ships were forming up, not a fleet, not yet, but something. A storm surge forming on the edge of Helix's reach. He nodded once, slowly. Then, very quietly, he said, "Good." Chapter 37. Fracture Line. The comm feed grid shimmered like a patchwork quilt of defiance. First a few faces, then dozens, then more. Fractured video streams spliced together by desperate tech crews and low-orbit signal thieves. Blurry cameras. Backgrounds flickering with power flux. Shadows of fighters and freighters behind grizzled faces. This wasn't a war room. This was the soul of the belt. A patchwork fleet of old haulers, hacked corvettes, rebel stations, and mobile mining crews stared through the feed into one another's lives for the first time. No ranks, no government, no military protocol. Just survivors, captains, smugglers, engineers, and ghosts. The woman who started the call, Captain Rowe, leaned forward in her frame. Her voice buzzed with static. "We're all here, what's left of us." In one corner feed, Idris Mailer, face lit by a flickering dashboard, scowled. "Let's get on with it. They're already mobilizing. Sitting on our hands is just waiting to die." A quiet voice cut in. Someone new, younger, unfamiliar. "Then who's in charge?" Silence fell. The question hung like a vacuum between them. For a moment, no one answered. Then the arguments began. One captain shouted about rank. Another insisted on seniority. An old stationer barked names of dead leaders who should have been here. Voices overlapped, crackled, distorted. Tension spiraled like wires coming loose. In the center square, Arg didn't speak. Not yet. He watched, arms folded, jaw set. The Dust Widow's bridge dim behind him. Scarred bulkheads casting harsh shadows across his face. He let them argue, let it churn. Then his hand moved, flat against the paddle, with a bang that rang like a pistol shot through the audio grid. Everyone stopped. One by one, feeds went silent, faces turned. Even the glitchy cameras seemed to settle. Arg leaned forward, elbows braced on the panel, eyes dark and focused. "You think Helix is waiting around while we argue titles?" he said, voice low but cutting. "No one in this feed was given this war. It was shoved into our hands when they bombed schools, when they vaporized hospitals, when they turned Kovac into a graveyard." His voice hardened. "We're not soldiers. We weren't trained for this, but we don't have a choice. They drew the line, and someone has to answer." He paused just long enough to let that settle. "You want a leader? Fine." He stood, face half lit by the widow's warning lights, the other half swallowed by shadow. "I've bled for this. I've flown through fire for this. And if I don't step up, nobody will. Not because I'm the best choice, because I'm the only one who can't walk away." He let out a breath and said it. "There is nobody other than me to fill that role. As much as I don't want it, I'm the leader of this." Silence, real this time. Then, slowly, heads began to nod. Captain Rowe gave a single thumbs up. Mallard just grunted. Others bowed slightly. One, younger woman, a miner in a scarred pressure suit, wiped her eyes. A dozen faces lit with quiet resolve. Others stayed still, but watching, waiting. Arg didn't smile. He didn't need to. "Now listen close," he continued. "They've got 2 fleet concentrations forming, Humia's comm node and Vega's drift fuel stacks. If we wait, we get boxed in. If we go too soon, we get slaughtered." A crude holographic overlay loaded onto the screen, courtesy of a shaky feed from a belt hacker group. "We strike both," Arg said, "at once." Murmurs again, hesitant, nervous. "We split," Arg clarified,
Not divide. Split. Hit fast. Hit smart. No giant fleet. No obvious moves. Fractured fire. He pointed to a region of the map blinking red. Yume's node. Cut their comms. Blind their coordination. We go silent and sharp. Vega drift. Louder. We draw their focus there. Burn their fuel before it becomes missiles. Mailer leaned forward in his feet. That's bold. It's the only shot we've got, Arg said. More captains began speaking this time. Strategy. Offers. Questions. Backup plans. Everyone had skin in the game now. Echo's voice whispered only in Arg's ear. 36 ships offering strike coordination, 15 requesting tactical overlays. You've started something, Arg. He didn't reply to Echo. He just looked at the grid of faces, broken, weary, scared. But no one left. And that was enough. Chapter 38. Cracks in Steel. Commander Elric Dane stood over the tactical holotable aboard the Helix Ascendant, jaw clenched tight enough to ache. Red markers blinked out one by one. The fuel depot at Vega Drift. Gone. The comms relay near Huma. Reduced to debris. Over a dozen defense satellites listed as unresponsive. Patrol craft had either gone dark or been outmaneuvered. Half of the automated sensor web no longer relayed clean telemetry. Every few seconds, another line of data failed to populate. Sir? A voice behind him, nervous, sharp, too fast. We've confirmed 62 coordinated vessel signatures, moving from at least 7 origin points. Their emissions were masked, likely under deep cold protocols or false registry beacons. We, missed them in pre-launch scans. Dane didn't turn around. Missed them, he said quietly. The lieutenant froze. Yes, sir. Dane stared at the holomap, dozens of flickering triangles, disorganized, but not directionless. Something had changed. They weren't reacting anymore. They were planning. He turned slowly, facing the primary ops deck. Officers at the console stations whispered in low tones. The air smelled of recycled stress and overheated coolant. The entire bridge felt like a held breath. This was supposed to be pacified, Dane said. The belt was supposed to be broken. He moved with methodical precision towards his command dais, boots echoing with cold clarity. His black uniform bore the clean, uncreased perfection of someone who had never been caught unprepared. Until now. Where's the widow? One of the aides flinched, tapping furiously at her console. Arg's vessel is currently broadcasting static, no transponder activity. Last triangulated vectors suggested a withdrawal to a dark zone behind Vega Drift. No direct visual since the comms attacked, but he was present. He was leading, Dane corrected. Another officer, young voice quivering, said, Sir, we're detecting non-standard comms cross-linking between independent belt ships. It's spreading. We think they're using repurposed Helix frequency modulations from old encryption suite. Our old one. Dane's hand curled into fists. So they're learning. He stood still a long moment, processing. The belt wasn't just pushing back. They were coalescing. Someone, no, Arg, was unifying them, turning the fractured shards of a rebel pride into a blade. We underestimated him, someone said from the back of the bridge. Every head turned. It was Admiral Kess Verun, white-haired, once retired, now recalled for his brutality and experience in asteroid suppression tactics. His one good eye narrowed. I told Central months ago not to let Kovac go unanswered. We gave them martyrs. Dane stepped off the dais, slowly, deliberately. And what would you have done? Glass the belt? We still need their ore, their salvage, their labor. Verun sneered. What you need is control, and what you're losing is fear. A new warning klaxon chimed. One of the comms officers shouted, Commander, unauthorized transmission spiking through relayed nodes, linked to Helix surveillance towers. A second later, Arg's face appeared. Not on a screen, On all of them. Bloodied but defiant. Lean, hard eyes. A man not posturing, but already at war. To the officers of Helix, you've made your intentions clear. You bombed our sick. You burned our schools. You thought you could silence us?
He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to.
But the belt remembers. And now the belt fights.
Then it cut out. Dead air. No signal. Just silence. Dane's face paled. He turned to his comms team. How the hell did he access? We don't know, the officer snapped. That should have been impossible. Varun growled. Nothing's impossible anymore. He's rallied them. Dane walked back to the holotable, eyes scanning the slowly forming constellation of belt signatures. He raised his voice, cool, commanding. Recall all forward patrols, reroute drone carriers to defense position Gamma 12, begin fleet consolidation. He glanced at Varun. And prepare retaliation strike protocols. Varun raised a brow. Which target? Dane's voice went cold.
All of them.
Chapter 39. The Knife Turns. The lighting inside the Dust Widow's bridge was low, pulsing with a soft amber glow, as if the ship itself were holding its breath. Across the main console, a fractured tactical display showed the aftermath of Arg's message. Signal pings, static bursts, and scrambled comms from across the belt. The war had just changed shape. Rel's face appeared in a flickering video window. His cheeks were drawn tight, a datapad gripped in one hand, eyes burning behind the screen glow. That message of yours, he said, voice dry as old rock, definitely pissed them off. Arg didn't look up from the nav chart he was marking. He finished the final vector with one sharp stroke of stylus to glass.
I'm counting on it, he said.
Behind him, Echo's voice murmured through the hull with that same careful calm she always wore in the heat of chaos. Helix fleet is on the move. Confirmed split. One task group burning hard towards Huma sector. Second group redirected toward Vega Drift. No signs of hesitation. Arg grunted.
That's their mistake.
Across the fractured belt, in refitted hold bays, on the decks of bulked-up mining ships and ancient freighters, the rebels of the Dust Ring moved like a machine, just now discovering it had teeth. Arg's forces had no uniforms, no doctrine, no shared language of war, just scars and survival. But now they had coordination and rage. Arg watched the feeds from both strike wings. Group A, led by Rel, had already pushed off their dark anchor points near the ice shadow of Huma. Their ships riding stealth vectors under minimal thrust. No light, no emissions. Just cold burn and silence. Group B was the hammer. His hammer. Aimed at Vega Drift's weakened underbelly. The target? The Helix fuel stockpile still stabilizing after their last attack. This time, they wouldn't just damage it. This time, they'd gut it. Rel's voice returned through the comms. We go dark in 60. If this works, they'll never see us coming. Arg exhaled through his nose, shoulders heavy.
They're already blind, he said. They just haven't realized it yet.
On the far edge of Vega's drift debris belt, Arg floated in the pilot's cradle of the Widow, suit sealed, helmet off. The Widow was venting cold gases, running completely silent, coasting on residual burn from the last orbital push. Outside, ships aligned beside his. Haulers, retrofitted miners, mining tugs. Ugly, brutal, and packed with explosives, hacking drones, and borrowed equipment. Echo's whisper returned. They've committed. Entire Helix fleet has pivoted to intercept your flanks. They believe this is the counter-offensive. Arg's mouth ticked up at the corner.
They're not wrong, he muttered.
Just early. He keyed his comm to Group B.
All ships, this is Void Miner. Prepare for ignition sequence on my mark. Hit 'em hard, hit 'em fast, and don't stay for the encore.
Across the formation, dozens of acknowledgments lights blinked green. He gave them one beat. 2.
Then, Mark! The Widow's engines hit hard in dead silence, flaring hard. All around him, ships came alive, thrusters igniting in the brutal precision. No battle formations, no elegant maneuvering, just raw violence unleashed in full synchronized fury. They screamed toward Vega Drift like wolves with fire on their backs. On the far side of the solar plane, Rel's group made first contact. Huma's comms node, a trio of satellites and a command cruiser parked in high drift, never saw them coming. They cut through the defense net in less than 3 minutes. Kinetic strikes, directed EMPs, board and burn tactics, no prisoners. Echo's data feed updated in real time. Huma's comms node offline. Enemy craft fleeing on erratic vector. Resistance minimal. Arg didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the looming mass of Vega drifts now visible through the cracked viewport. Massive fuel cylinders drifted in place, anchored to Helix scaffolds. Gun platforms rotated solely in search of targets. They were too late. By the time the guns opened fire, the belt had already breached the perimeter. Explosions rippled across the outer ring as freighter teams detached shaped charges and let their ships go. Ghost rigs with no crew, carrying death straight into Helix lines. Arg pulled the Widow into a sharp banking turn, targeting a node on the primary tank spine. He let Echo handle the targeting. Arming burning lances, Echo intoned. The Widow's main cannon whined, locking in. Arg fired. The tank rupture was cataclysmic. A rolling fireball exploded outward, catching 3 Helix interceptors mid-turn. The rest tried to flee, but the belt didn't let them. From all angles, Arg's group converged, wrecking Helix supply lines, severing their ability to mount an immediate counterattack. And above it all, rising from deep space, came Helix's returning fleet. Too far, too late. Echo's voice again. Helix heavy fleet now on approach. Estimated time to firing range, 6 minutes. Arg scanned the feed. The belt was already peeling away, dispersing like flak. We did what we came for, he muttered. He keyed in the open line. This is Void Miner. Target secured. Break and scatter. Full escape vectors. We'll regroup at preset shadow nav points. Rel's voice came in a moment later. Confirmed. They're chasing ghosts now. Arg looked one last time at the burning wreckage of Vega Drift. A Helix platform split down the middle, fuel tanks spinning in flames. A message etched in destruction. We're not running anymore. He pulled the Widow into a steep climb, engines flaring to full burn, and vanished into the dark. The end of Part 2 of Void Miner, the Belt War.